Greeting and salutations, Series 7 test takers. This is the Series 7 Guru. I'm coming to you from my studio here in fabulous Las Vegas. We are recording the first episode in our podcast series on the Series 7 exam. We have lots of different playlists for various series. You should find your series, find the playlist. The playlists are in suggested watch order, and the videos in those playlists are also in suggested watch order. It's a buffet. You take what you like, leave what you don't. But we are now adding a podcast playlist to the Series 7. So before we begin that, this is episode 1, the introduction. Let's talk about the differences between the SIE exam and the Series 7 exam. First, let me give you kudos for passing that first leg of your testing journey. And this will be your second leg of your testing journey. And just want you to be clear about the differences between the SIE exam and the Series 7 exam. You've now slayed your SIE dragon, but this dragon is a little different, So there are 3 types of questions you receive on both the SIE exam and the Series 7 exam. And those 3 types of questions are as follows. You have recognition questions. Those are simply things you know or you don't know, flashcard stuff. Like regular way settlement for corporates and munis is T+1. The vast majority of the performance opportunities, that's what I call test questions, on the SIE exam are recognition. The second style of question you get on both the SIE and the Series 7 are practical application. Like what is current yield? What the investment pays you divided by what it costs you. And you get a couple practical application questions on the SIE exam. And then the last type of question you get are judgment questions. Those are the ones where you go, oh man, I don't know, And very few, maybe 1 or 2 judgment questions on the SIE. And that is the major difference between the 2 exams. The major difference is, unlike the SIE, which is mainly recognition, there are recognition style questions on your Series 7 exam. There's a lot more practical application, like what is the break even in a option strategy, for example, what is tax or tax-free equivalent yields, for example, calculating parity, more practical application questions on the Series 7 than found on the SIE exam. And there's a lot more judgment questions. For example, suitability on the Series 7 are judgment questions. You go, okay, given this fact set or this profile, what would or would you not recommend? What would or would not be suitable? A lot more of that on the Series 7. About 10%, 15% of the exam on the Series 7 are judgment questions. It's not flashcard. It's not recognition, not practical application. So on the Series 7, you cannot afford to be giving up recognition and practical application questions, because in practical application, there's no interpretation of what the right answer is. And recognition, you simply know what you don't. You want to save your misses for judgment questions on the Series 7. All right, so that's the main difference in terms of what you could expect in terms of the differences between the 2 exams. I'm hoping you overlearned your SIE exam, because that's always a proper way to proceed, because, that'll pay dividends now for you on your Series 7. Now, you're not going to have a time constraint on your Series 7. You might run out of time, but you're not going to run out of, you might, excuse me, I got to ask backwards. You might run out of right answers, but you're not going to run out of time. If you have a time constraint, you created it yourself by turning aim and shoot, point and click questions into judgment questions that were not there. So I get so exasperated with people who, have time constraints. The heading of this introduction is to, pass the test, know the test. And if you are having a time constraint, that means you basically did not do practice exams, practice tests with a clock to score yourself to see how much time it takes you to get through a performance opportunity, a test question. So make sure you just check that. They're not trying to sort you by how quick you think. So you should have plenty of time to do this. The passing score is 72%. You're going to have 125 scored questions. You're going to get 10 what are called experimental questions that do not contribute or not scored, for a total of 135 performance opportunities. 125 of those performance opportunities are scored, and you need to get to 72% on that. And then 10 of them they're trying out for future exams. So if you see an outer space question, something never covered by your test prep vendor, never covered by yours truly, you've never seen it anywhere, I would say guess B, a sign of the universe, move on. It's not productive to be eating up time on questions you're not familiar with. They're testing them for validity for future exams. All right, so the content outline of Series 7. Sometimes people say, well, Dean, how do you know that isn't on the Series 7 exam? I said, well, if it's not within the Series 7 content outline, they're not allowed to ask it. And there is a certain narrative sense to the Series 7, the test exam, and the content outline. Function 1 makes sense, right? Find a customer. As a baby broker, that's a term of endearment, not a derogatory term. Finding prospecting and finding new people to open accounts is the lifeblood of a new broker. So function 1 is seeking business for the broker dealer from customers and potential customers. 9 questions. As you can see my note here, find a customer. So, by the way, even if you're not a retail broker at A.G. Edwards, not going into production at Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch or UBS, the test assumes you are. So as a test taker, you want to assume this idea that you're going to be a retail stockbroker at one of those firms, and you're going to go be finding a customer. Okay, once you found a customer, what happens next? 9 questions, 7% of your exam. You're going to open the account. So finding the customer would be, stuff like you don't cold call, what are the hours, the do not call list, that kind of thing. And then function 2 would be open the account, 11 questions here on, joint tenants in common, or joint tenants with the rights or survivorship, tenants in common, accounts, margin accounts, that kind of thing. 11 questions, and customer financial profile. When I was a practitioner, I used to say, hey, for me to do a really good job for you over time, I need to know a lot about you. The more I know about you, the better I'm going to be in determining suitability. As part of that financial profile, when I was a practitioner, I'd say, what I'd like to do is take a picture in time, a snapshot today of where you are currently. I'd like to do a little balance sheet. Could you tell me about your current assets, your long-term assets, your current liabilities, your long-term liabilities, and establish your net worth? I'd also like to see, how much money you have coming in and going out, maybe financial statements. I'd like to read you a list of investment objectives, have you rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very important, 1 not important at all. And again, that would help me in terms of, the third section, which is the biggest part of the exam, make an investment, right? Function 3 provides customers with information about investments. Make recommendations, transfer assets, maintain records. That's 91 questions, 73% of the exam. Of those 91 questions, this is where the vast majority of suitability questions come in, right? Tax-free income on munis, don't recommend partnerships if somebody needs liquidity, all of that. Now, of these investment questions, the big 3 areas on the exam are munis, options, and mutual funds. Those are the 3 major categories within function 3. Now, after we've made the investment, function 4, 14 questions, 11% of the exam. You can see my note here, after the trade. So it kind of makes sense. We find a customer, we open an account, we make an investment, and then what happens afterwards? And by far, the biggest section is this function 3. So what we're going to be doing in the podcast series, episode 2, is we're going to be focusing first on function 3. So we're going to do these in weighting, probability weighting on the test. So we're going to work our way through in this podcast series, function 3 first, and we'll end with the function that has the least amount of questions, which again is that function 1, 9 questions, right? So we're going to be doing reverse order. We're going to do function 3, 91 questions on the podcast series. Then we're going to do after the trade, 14 questions. We'll do function 4. Then we'll do function 2 in the podcast series, and we'll finish up with function 1. So we're doing reverse order of weighting on the actual exam. So our next episode, now that we've completed this short introductory to the series and the exam itself, episode 2, we'll start out with function 3.1, balance sheets. So I'll see you for the next episode. Remember, inch by inch, your Series 7 is a cinch. Yard by yard, your Series 7 is hard. If there's anything you'd like me to pay particular attention to I'm just starting the podcast series. So assuming you're watching this real time and it already hasn't been put into history, let me know what you want me to pay particular importance or elaborate on in the podcast series that is following. My pace on this, if you're watching real time, is to put out an episode a week or so. So that's my game plan. I may or may not be able to get that done. All right. So again, remember, inch by inch, your Series 7 is inch, yard by yard, your Series 7 is hard. I'll see you for episode 2 on balance sheets. Bye-bye.